Hey, toy fans, my name is Tony, and welcome to episode 22 of Palitalk, a retro toy podcast. And I'm joined today by my friend Nick from the excellent YouTube channel Action Pop Dad. Nick, how you doing today?
Hello, mate. I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on.
It's a pleasure, man. I've been enjoying. I've watched your live streams where you've had Michael on your channel.
Sorry about
Michael
that.
French from Retro Blasting, and yeah, it's we've been as you do on YouTube, you start that kind of relationship with someone just by chatting on social media and things like that, and then sort of seeing you more and more. Then I contributed to one of your videos a while back, and I thought, yeah, it's about time I had my next guest on Palitalk. So there you go.
Oh, man, I really appreciate it. I've been watching analog toys for years, and I've lost count how many times I've watched the Action Man documentary. So, no, it's tough to be here, man.
Just recently, in the last week or so, I've had a number of comments on the YouTube channel of people complaining about the looping music in that documentary, and like I find it hard to go back and watch now because I made that 10 years ago, and I've evolved so much as I wouldn't call myself a filmmaker, but a videographer. There's a guy the other day, and he's like, "Can you remove the music and re-upload the video?" I'm like, "Bro, I did that 10 years ago. I don't even have the original editing files because I've had to upgrade my computer, and the old software that I use to edit that doesn't even work anymore on Apple." So
I can't even say that the looping music bothered me. And my little lad Jax, he's proper into his Action Men, and I really enjoy it. I've seen it a lot, but he is I've probably watched it more because he likes it so much. And I'll tell you what, I'd rather sit and watch that on loop than watch Paw Patrol or Blazing the Monster Machines.
Well, look, Nick, part of the reason I do Palitalk is it gives an opportunity for some of my guests to come on and introduce them to a new audience. So feel free to plug away your YouTube channel. The link to your channel is in the description of this video, and I think maybe
Thank you very much
in the live chat as well.
Brilliant.
But let's go back to the start, Nick. I'm not going to ask you exactly how old you are, but
I don't mind saying. I'm 38. Well, I'm 38.
Okay, so early 80s kid, and where did you grow up?
So I grew up in
mid-80s?
I was born in 84. Born in 84, so I sort of picked in the toy aspect of things. Sort of picked up the back end of the 80s and Thundercats and a bit of He-Man and stuff. But I grew up in Dorset, right on the south coast. I'm still in Dorset. I just live in North Dorset now in farmer land, and that's basically where I've spent my whole life. So Dorset is what I know. And much to people telling me sometimes I sound like a farmer, even though I don't hear it. So,
well, that's not too far from me, man. I was born in West Sussex, grew up in West Sussex, south coast. On maybe 1 or 2 days a year, you can actually see the French coastline, depending on the weather. About 2 days a year, the English weather gives us to be able to.
So, did your family ever do the come to Bournemouth Beach thing in the summer for a day and stuff like that?
Yep.
Oh, so you know that. So I always say Bournemouth to people because Bournemouth's the easy one to identify. But I actually grew up in Poole, which is a few miles out from Dorset. So I grew up not far from Poole Quay and all of that. So that's really what I know. A proper townie, now converted to a farmer type because I chatted up a bird in a country pub and ended up marrying. So
yeah. Poole, it's where the Royal Marines do their training, eh?
That's right. Yeah. I've got a couple of friends down there, so really not far from there at all. In fact, my sister lives stone's throw from where they do their training because her neighbour is in, and I plastered his house. So there you go. But in fact, I'm a plasterer, by the way.
Oh, I'm in mining. I'm not a miner, but I'm in mining. So I find it pretty boring. I wish I could do YouTube full time, but I think I'm a few years away from that yet. What I would really like to do, I'm kind of working on this plan in the next sort of 12 months, is to go into more of I wouldn't exactly call it a part-time role, but a job company where I can do a lot more work from home. I'll be taking a pay cut, but some less hours where, you know, when you don't
focus some more on your YouTubes and
stuff like that, I can get up, I can do my work, and then as soon as that's done, just switch from one computer to the other and get going on the channel again. So,
well, to be fair, dude, and I've been watching your sub count raise in the last few years. At the rate you're going, I mean, it's you know, it's doing well. What was it, 50,000 the other day? Sorry about that cough there.
That's all right. It was, and I think I did a Patreon message because I was really hoping to hit 50,000 before New Year, and we ended up getting there about 5 days later, that's fine. It's close enough for me. But as I was kind of getting close to it, I was trying to think. I was like, I can't remember where I was this time last year, so I went back and had a look, and I was at 37,500 at the turn of 2022. So I was like,
wow, that's massive growth.
12,500 in the last year. That's a quarter of my subscribers. But then when I looked into it a little bit more, I came across an Analog Toys Facebook post from September where I'd hit 41,000. So that last 9,000 came in the last 3 months.
Yeah, when you said that, that's why I said wow, because I think I recall. In fact, I'm pretty sure I recall you making a post or something because I can't remember what it was, but basically someone had said that you were losing subscribers because of a certain idiot we don't really talk about. And you did a post and you're like, nope, my subs are going up. And it's like, yeah, they just keep going. But if you stay honest to what you believe and what you do, man, they will. So
yeah,
there's nothing false about it. I mean, that's certainly something I'm trying to be my best to be as honest as I can in my videos. I mean, whenever I record a video, I'll be honest, I do sort of stand there like a deer in the headlights, and I do suddenly turn on my telephone voice. I don't know why. I've got to work on that. I was listening to I was listening to a Palitalk earlier today, and you were saying about how you used Ross Kemp as a guide for when you were doing your narration and stuff.
Man, that's taken me back. That was an old Palitalk that I was probably with Mike. That was one of the first ones.
I think it was the one with Michael, and I was sort of listening to that, thinking, I could really do with listening to how people speak because excuse me, because whenever I go on camera, it's almost like I clam up a bit. I'm a show off. I'm loud. I never stop talking. Anyone who knows me will tell you he never shuts up. But put a camera in front of me, and it's almost like boom. Yeah. You wouldn't think it on here, but it's just when I've got to film something, it's like filming an intro for a video. The one that you provided a segment for that whole 45-second intro, I reckon it took me the best part of an hour to get that. And I've actually kept all the times of me losing my temper and swearing. So I put a video to get for all the outtakes.
Yeah, I know the feeling, man. I've been doing YouTube 6.5 years, and I'll still sit down and those bits where I'm talking to the camera. Sometimes when I'm writing a script, I'll write a lot, and I put a little note in where right you're going to be on camera for this part. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'll write that bit, and I'm going, you're going to have so much trouble with those couple of lines when it comes around to it. But you know,
no, I get it completely.
The sacrifice you've got to make to try and make your content as good as you can. So,
well, since doing APD, I mean, there's a whole newfound respect for all the channels like yours and retro blasting and that I've been watching for years. Because although I'm not even suggesting my stuff is anywhere on a level with you guys' stuff, but you start to realize how videos are made, and you think, oh my god, these guys are putting a lot into this because. You know, it's quite a learning curve making of it. Even my first video to my last one, I mean, I still think my last one was, I've done as best as I can currently. I'm trying to learn, but even from the first one to like the fifth one, it's like, wow. Like watching the first bit, I'm sat on a stool hunched like this, talking like that. It's like, what are you doing? It looks like you don't want to be there.
So, look, Nick, so you were born in 1984. So what are the first toys you remember playing with?
So the first toys I mainly remember with, so I've got 4 sisters, 2 older, 2 younger. And one of my older sisters, I think the term for it would be, she was a tomboy and she was massively into He-Man. So some of the earliest toys I remember, I myself didn't have He-Man toys, but my sister, Julianne, did. So I can remember playing with like Hordak, had a He-Man, had a Skeletor, had a She-Ra. I remember playing with those very vividly, very clearly in my mind. And then Thundercats, I don't know how that came about, but I can remember having the Thunder Tank and the main cast of characters and the Fist Pounder. And then the other toys that really stick in my mind that I really must chase down. Did you ever hear of a line called Manta Force? They were like spaceships with these minifigures in them. And I had so many of those. And I look now on eBay to track them down. I think, I wish I never played with these till they broke or lost parts, because I want them back, but they're so expensive.
They are. But they are. I think the guys from Toy Shop on Tour have been picking a few of those up in that last season when they were going through Europe. They were picking up some of those. So
sure, yeah, they're crazy prices. And the real big one from there was 2 real big ones after that from childhood. Not necessarily the first toys, but I was sort of 4 or 5 when Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles, it was in England, came out. And I can remember my mum managed to get me a Leonardo and a Raphael, and my cousin had Donatello and Michelangelo. And so we were like the first kids at our school to have the turtles. And I can really remember the buzz around getting those. They were crazy cool toys. I look back now and they're a bit rubbish, but at the time I absolutely loved them.
Yeah, well, it did help with that cartoon. You know, when I first came across Turtles was not when they kind of first hit, because I don't know when they hit the UK. I think in the States they came out in '88, but that was the year when my family up sticks and moved to Australia. And the first time I really remember seeing Turtles, I want to say, was either 90 or 91. Because that's when the cartoon first aired in Australia. We got it a little bit later.
I think it was probably 89, 90 in the UK, if I recall. I'm just going by because in Australia, didn't they historically used to get things later again? Because like sort of America got it, then Europe, then Australia.
Yeah. We would always tend to be like a year behind, and so when that hit, I would have been kind of 13 going on 14, and although I didn't admit it to friends at school, because I just started high school when it came out, so I was racing home from school every day to watch Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but I didn't want my friends to know. But I was at that age where I was like, yeah, the toys aren't for me. I'm I was living in a new country, bro. I wanted to become a surfer and grow dreadlocks and all that, and then I realized I don't have the balance for it. So
I remember all too well. I mean, obviously it wasn't around Turtles time, but I can remember being about 12, 13, and my parents saying, sort of making a comment like, "You're too old to be playing with toys." And I can remember I had my sort of 90s Action Men, sort of sneaking a play with them in the bedroom. And then you go up to high school and you really don't want people to know you play with toys, because that's you're going to get it bad. But I remember that was such a depressing time, like going from getting cool toys for your birthday to like jumpers and body spray because you're a smelly teenager, I remember it all too well.
So you say Turtles was your first big one. I think I can probably guess what the other one was.
Okay, so I bet you've got it. Power Rangers was huge. Like Power Rangers was Power Rangers, man. But that was more middle school. But no, there is a bit of a story. I mean, because obviously I did look at the show notes, but I can't remember the. I don't want to go too much into other bits, but Power Rangers was a huge thing for me. But Action Man, the 90s Action Man was huge for me. And that all stemmed because I had one vintage Action Man that our neighbour gave us with the remains of the Scorpion tank. And I played with that thing to death. And when it fell apart, my mum and dad binned it, because obviously they didn't know about restringing like we do. I mean, now an Action Man falls apart, you restring him and get him standing up again. But I was so upset by that. And then obviously the 90, was it 92, 90? Alan Dawson's in the chat, he'll remember because he's got a better memory than me for these things. But I then got the G.I. Joe Hall of Fame, which were rebranded as Action Man again over here, and they were huge. But I'm interested to know what did you think it was going to be?
90s Action Man.
Yeah, yeah. No, I went off on that. No, but the thing is, I don't know about you, Tony. Do you ever look back on your childhood and the years sort of amalgamate into one? And I can't necessarily remember at what points I had what toys because I very much played them all. But 90s Action Man, yeah, that was a huge one for me. But I have to say, Power Rangers was probably equally bigger. I loved Power Rangers. I mean, I look back at it now, it was terrible. But I'll still watch the. I watched the whole Green Ranger saga the other day on YouTube, and I was trying to get Jax to watch it with me, and he's like, "This is rubbish, Daddy." I'm like, "To be fair, mate. To be fair, you're not wrong. This is rubbish, but when I was your age, this was gold."
I can remember sitting down. My son, he's 16 now. I want to say when he was around 10, I sat down with him to watch the original Star Wars trilogy. Mm-hmm. And he got like 20 minutes in to the first Star Wars film, and he's like, "Why are we watching something so old?" I was like, "Dude, I think this film still stands up."
Yeah, Matt, I think it does. See, I made the classic Star Wars mistake, and I wish I'd never done this with Jackson, and it took ages to get him. I've never forced Jackson to watch anything. I put it on, "Do you want to watch this with me?" And if he says yes, brilliant. But I finally got him and said, "Do you want to watch Star Wars with me?" He's like, yeah, because he had some Star Wars toys. Luke Reynolds sent him like a Millennium Falcon and stuff, really generous of him and some figures and stuff. But do you want to watch Star Wars? Because he's making up all his own stories with these figures with no idea of the film. So we get down to watch it. And this idiot right here decides, well, let's start with episode 1. And that killed it for him for about a year. And then eventually when I got him back to it, he'd sit. So because I watched the bad lip reading videos where they take the mick with the songs, he'd seen all the Empire Strikes Back snow scenes, and he wanted to watch that. So yeah, I think we watched it all ass about face. We watched Empire first, but he was glued. So it's, I know there's people there who say if they grew up with the prequels, that's their thing. Fair enough, but what I will say is I've witnessed my boy literally look at the prequels and go, "Nah, I ain't watching that rubbish." But stick him in front of the original trilogy, and he's all up on it, So
yeah,
testament to how well they're made.
I've never been able to get my son into. I mean, I've not like forced very hard or anything. I've always wanted him to pursue his own stuff. But after a while, I started to realize it was like I don't need to kind of introduce him to Star Wars, whether it's the prequels or the original or whatever, because I could just kind of turn around one day and I was like, man, apart from I think the first 2 Marvel movies, because he was a bit too young then. I think from the first Avengers onwards, we've gone to almost every single Marvel movie. We've gone to the cinema together. Up until Endgame, and then we don't really go to the movies anymore. But yeah, that's really been our kind of father-son thing over the last decade, is the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
I mean, for Jax, he's it's brilliant because he's massively into Doctor Who, like massively into Doctor Who, and I'm massively into Doctor Who. My wife's massively into Doctor Who, and he's even open to watching the classic episodes as well. So that's really good. And he's got like the, I forget the name of the company, you've just done a video on them not long ago, the more modern Doctor Who toys. He's got a load of those and he's really into that. But just to jump back quickly on the Action Man toy line, I just wanted to say, and I think you may have referenced this in your documentary, I liked 90s Action Man until he started becoming basically like someone who roller skated or rode mountain bikes. When he was military, he was proper cool and I loved him. But as soon as it went off course, like the first ones like Duke, Snake Eyes, Stalker, Cobra Commander, loved those because I had no idea at the time that they were G.I. Joe figures rebranded. And they did a couple more, heavy machine gun assault or something or other. Again, Alan will, he's forever to remind me of them. When they were like that, excellent. But that's around the time that happened when Power Rangers came in to connect the dots, which I know Power Rangers is campy and whatnot, but Power Rangers is its thing. But for me, Action Man had to be Action Man, not not somebody gluing his face to a pavement on the M25, stopping.
Yeah, well, I believe those first 90s figures came out in 92. In Australia, again, a year later, we got them in 93. So 93, I would have been like 15 going on 16. I was getting ready to leave school the following year and go into the army. So I remember when they hit, and the first two waves was not actually made by Hasbro UK. It was those G.I. Joe Hall of Fame figures, which in the UK they rebranded as Action Man. In Australia, they sold them as G.I. Joe. But I can remember being 15 years old, going into a toy store, and they had, it was Duke, Snake Eyes, Cobra Commander, Stalker was wave 1, and then wave 2 was Destro, Ace, Storm Shadow, something else. And at 15, I bought the Ace figure because I liked the fighter pilot jumpsuit and the helmet and all of that stuff. There's when I was 15, I bought this thing and took it home and didn't tell anyone. And but then Hasbro UK said, right, we're going to start doing our own thing. And Action Man, that's when it went to the orange packaging, and they started doing ninjas and things like that. And those first few waves of those were awesome. One of my favorites was, there was, I want to say it was called the Special Mission set. Basically, a guy, he had a black jumpsuit on and a black hood, but you could change the outfit where you put a green jacket on and a hat, and he was like a mountaineer. And he came.
I know the one you mean, yeah. I know the one.
That was one of my favorites, and there was an add-on accessory set you could get that had like a bivouac lean-to and a little fire where you actually had a fish where you stuck a stick through the middle of it and put it on top of the fire and rotated it around and cooked his dinner. I love that.
That was awesome because I think the last sort of zany 90s action, there was it was like a sort of virtual reality one, but it was the new Eagle Eyes version.
Yep.
And I didn't really like the outfit on it, but played with it. But I just wanted it for the Eagle Eyes. And the one thing I do remember about the very early 90s Action Man is I can remember my dad looking at it going, "This is rubbish. You could move Action Man when I was a kid." Because of the very first early 90s ones, they're like all hench, and they've got like the little click joints in the arms and that rotation, and that was it. But the later ones, well, you'll know, they certainly improved the body of him. He still was nowhere near as robust as vintage Action Man. Because I'd certainly there was certainly a couple of casualties of war through jumping out, them going out the bedroom window and things. Their legs would tend to snap off. But and unlike I know the blue pants era figures are a real nightmare to fix when they break, but the original like elasticated ones, I mean, if they fall apart, restring them.
But I mean, the good thing with the with the blue pants, for those in the chat who don't know what we're talking about,
sorry,
when Action Man came out with the dynamic physique, they molded on blue underpants because prior to that he was like quite androgynous. Those are obviously, fixing the necks, which is a common fault. That's quite easy, but anything else that breaks on it is difficult to repair. But they were a lot more robust than the early ones. They didn't tend to break as much. So,
yeah, I mean, I've got in my collection, I think I've got probably about 65 vintage Action Men, which is about 65.
How long have you been collecting for?
So, and this, I mainly started collecting properly about 4 years ago. I had a couple, and then I bought a few job lots, and then the pandemic happened, and I wasn't spending money anywhere else. And then I meet people like Alan, I go to events like AmCon, and then suddenly it builds up. But I got lucky really early, Tony, because I had a couple of amazing job lots, like where I well underpaid on them. I mean, I got one job lot which came with something like 12 figures in it. And there was the RAF pilot outfit in there complete. There was Space Rangers in there complete. There was the Commando complete, officer, SAS. And I was just like, holy hell, I can remember posting it on one of the Action Man groups, and people are like, oh my God. And when I said what I paid for it and people asked, they were like, I remember someone was putting in capitals, robbery. I was like, well, no, that's what they asked for. That's what I paid them. I didn't knock them down. But no, 65, it probably is excessive. And it's certainly a video which I spoke to you about a while ago about is the chase better than the catch is gonna cover that, because I think I got to a point I initially wanted I had a couple before pandemic and I'd restored them and I was getting bits for them, making them up, and then I got a couple more. Then the pandemic hit, and then it went a bit nuts because, although I worked through it, I was going home. There was nothing to do because I was in a band pre-pandemic. So all my focus was in go home, do the band. And then suddenly the band was gone and I couldn't hang out with my friends. And I was just, I'll admit, I was enjoying hunting things out. It's now working out. What was I chasing? Was I chasing Action Man, or was I chasing the buzz of getting that bit? Which is, I'll hold my hands up to. I was guilty of that through the pandemic. I probably wouldn't have expanded my collection as much as I have. But so I appreciate my collection is large for that time, but I like it.
Well, now when I started collecting, and I've told the story many times, I went to a collectible toy soldier show with my dad. Had always known I was going to become a collector, and he was at this table like doing this deal with this guy over a box of die-cast metal soldiers. And underneath the table, the guy had this massive milk crate, and it had in there was a box $6 million man in like a Denny's Fisher box, a Maskatron, a Bionic Woman, a Action Man complete deep sea diver, the SAS helicopter, an SAS figure. And he was like $100 for the box. And $100 was a lot of money back then. It was probably more like, $200-300 today. And I never ever thought my dad would stump up that money, but he was like, if this starts you on your journey, I want to be that person to help you out. So he laid out the $100. And I went home and I was like, I am going to collect every single Action Man toy ever. Here I am, 30 years. It's 30 years this year since I properly started collecting. And about 10 years ago, I was like, yeah, I'm never going to have every Action Man item ever made. It's not like Star Wars.
There's no real
I don't
finish,
have everything
is there?
Star Wars. Hey?
Sorry, there's no real finish, is there? Because you've got all the different like Quartermaster stuff, and then you've got like the Alan Hall books where he's put together his interpretations of certain cards and things, and it can go on, can't it? It really can.
Such a massive toy line. Like I don't have all the Star Wars stuff in and I don't really have any desire to complete the last 17 because I didn't play with them when I was a kid. So every time Stan Solo makes the last 17 figure, I'll pick it up. But I'm not paying, £600 for a pop-up Saber R2D2. But even still,
at all.
I collected what's the, I think there's 79 figures without the last 17. I completed that figure collection a couple of years ago with help from a lot of friends. But I'd only been collecting Star Wars about 8 years, and I don't have everything. I've got a lot of the vehicles. I need a few more play sets. And I'm like, if I worked hard at it and I ignored like droids and Ewoks and the last 17, I reckon I could finish that collection in 12 to 18 months. Action Man, there is just 18 years they were going, man. And you look at vehicles. There are so many, and they're so big.
But that's the problem I've got.
I can't pay for the shipping to Australia, so
I've got the Scorpion tank next to complete as well, because I had a friend who said to me, he was in the collecting community, he's like, I've got some vehicles, would you like them? I was like, I'm not just taking them. No, have them. But what I didn't realize at the time is he's saying, I've got no room for these, store them at your house, and I've got no room for them. And it's a shame, but it's like I was saying to someone a while ago, if I display the Scorpion tank, so my displaying is literally my side of the bedroom. I haven't got my own room or anything. The house is very small. So I've got 3 shelves and I've got the top of the wardrobe. And it's a nice display I've put together, and I have to rotate it. I take things out where I've got some stuff stored and I move them around and I rotate the shelf so it doesn't become boring. If I say, for example, put the Scorpion tank up, that wipes out half of the shelf. And so all that sort of that limited real estate I've got to display my toys. And you saying about the Star Wars stuff, I decided to sort of try and collect Star Wars on the cheap, which was what my first APD video was about. Because I'm very much, if you want to buy a beta figure and paint it and stick a 199 root for a weapon in its hand, go for your life.
Yep.
I do. I don't care. Equally, I don't care if you want all original stuff. So just don't tell me what to do. But
each to their own, man.
Yeah. And but I got lucky with Star Wars. My friend, I'm not at my house at the moment because there was a power cut at my house. I'm actually sat in my friend's conservatory to make tonight happen. And he's probably in his kitchen watching now on his phone. But he had a load of his childhood Star Wars toys and bits he'd picked up. And I brought a big job lot off of him back last year. And there was it got me 50 figures in straight away, nearly 50 figures in, and a load of vehicles and whatnot. But one thing I always say, it's like when you said, how long have you been collecting for? One thing I will admit, I mean, I've collected toys for years, but when I focus on a line, I do very much go all in on it. I find I need an obsession sometimes in life to keep this in order. I need something to really focus on. And I think that's what was going on through the pandemic. My wife and my family, I think they were almost like, just let him collect his dolls because he is happy. Don't, and I know that dolls is a bad thing in the X-Man community, but that's what, I'm known at work as the doll collector. So it's fine. I got broad shoulders. But no,
that doesn't bother me either.
yeah, man. I mean, the pandemic was rubbish for everyone. We were all in a rubbish place with it. And I really do think that, because I was really passionate with my band, as I say, I loved going away. We'd do band practice. We had a gig coming up. We wanted to learn 3 or 4 songs. And I was the one member of the band. I'd go away and I would learn my parts. Like, diligently, everything would be nailed down, as leave nothing to chance.
So and when suddenly you play an instrument, or
bass guitar, bass guitarist, and occasional bad lead singer. I used to get called up. I think I used to do vocals on Highway to Hell was the one I used to do the vocals on. Because I was the only one who could scream and didn't care if they couldn't talk for 2 days afterwards. And it was peaceful for everyone else, to be fair. So I think that's why they did it. Let him sing that. He won't be able to talk at band practice tomorrow. But no, so that was the thing. I did become very obsessive with what songs I learn. That's just the way I'm made up. Anything I do, what's the point in doing it if I don't give it? I'm not saying giving 100% to something means I'm going to be the best at doing it. It just means I'm going to give my best to it.
Yep.
And
I can really, really relate to that, man. I really can. I mean, it's in the tagline of Analog Toys, a vintage obsession, because I get obsessed about things which some people might say, being obsessive compulsive is not a good thing, but I've always found it a real good thing for my mental health. It keeps my brain away
100%,
from...
Yeah.
And I've talked about it certainly a lot on my Patreon about how obsessing over running the channel, obsessing over collecting toys, how all of that has helped me with my mental health from from my time in the service. So
I mean, there's certainly been dark patches in my life, and it creeps in and out from time to time. It really does. And so, it's one of those things. So what I found, medicating or speaking to psychiatrist, that doesn't help. But if I just get really fixated on that thing and I just put all that passion into that thing, then all the crap swilling around, it's like, just, that can sod off. I'm focused on this now. And if I'm focused on this, and I think that's part of why the Action Man collection just went boom, because I needed that something. I mean, I'd loved Action Man for years. So as we've already established, the 90s stuff was where I came in. I did it. Being an 80s child, there was a few, I had one vintage Action Man, but I had so many vintage Action Man bits of clothing and bits of vehicles and stuff eventually. Because when I was a kid, you could go to a car boot sale and you could pick up Action Man bits, because they were, it's not like now where you've got to go to shows or eBay, or like if you find one in a charity shop, as I found out the other day, they're like trying to charge £25-30 for them because they've cottoned on that there's money to be had. So no, I will hands up admit right here, I become very obsessive with the things I collect, and it's very much so to stop my brain going nuts, because it's just.
So what else do you collect? Action Man, Star Wars, what else?
Star Wars. I had so many Action Force as a kid as well. My mum bought a box from one of her friends, and it was just Tony. It was to the brim with Action Force toys, and I suspect my mum gave it away, because I had that many of them. It just does not stand to reason that whenever I've been up in my mum's loft, that I can't even find any trace of them. But I can remember figures now. Do you know the SAS key figure? Like, I had no idea that was an SAS figure when I was a kid. I had no context for it. But he was always the bad guy because he looked bad, But I had a load of those, and I had figures, and I look back and think, I wish I still had those. But it doesn't really matter. I can track them down again, and I had fun with them. But no, I collect Action Force. I've ventured I've got a couple of Mego toys now. They're a bit lethal to sort of look down the path of. But there is always going to be a heavy 90s influence on me. I was saying I want to start picking up Manta Force things again, because I was big into that. I'd like to, because of limited space in that, I'd like anything I collect, what I try and do is I try and just get sort of the key figures, like if it's from a cartoon or something, just the main cast as a representation of it, rather than, obviously I went a bit nuts with Action Man, but with everything else, I try and keep it there. But collection wise, it is limited down to really a few 90s Action Men, vintage. I love vintage Action Man. I know I grew up after it, but once you discover that line and how beautiful it is, it seeps into you, and I've seen your collection.
Well, I mean, I grew up in the Eagle Eye era, but I had a brother who was born in 71, and my dad is the eldest of four. His youngest brother was quite a bit younger than him. My uncle's Action Man stuff, which was all the early 60s painted head stuff, got handed down to my brother. Then my brother through the 70s was getting a lot of the, flock tear painted eye kind of stuff. And then when I got into it, I got handed all of that stuff down to me, plus I was getting some new stuff. So when it came to collecting, and I'd spoken to other, the internet wasn't around back in those days, but people would say, Action Man's such a big range. Just collect like the period that you grew up with. And I was like, but the shit I grew up with went all the way back to 1966. So I just jumped all in, and I wanted everything from 66 to 84, man. And after 20 odd years, I was like, I'm never going to achieve this.
I'm a huge fan of the painted hair hard and hands era, the real early ones. I love them. I've got the other day, I can't remember, because shameless plug here. I'm administrator on one of the Vintage Action Man groups, Vintage Action Man Barracks, and we've just had an event on this last weekend gone, and it was for space and pilots, and we've got some more coming up. But I was just chatting to the lads in the background, the other administrators. This wasn't for the day, but I finally completed my German Stormtrooper, all original. Tell a lie, one of the stick grenades is repro. I'm bidding on one at the moment on eBay. But I just was looking at it in awe the other day. If you collect toys, if you don't collect toys, you probably don't get this. But Tony, you know what it's like when you stand and you just stand back and go, "Yep, that is awesome."
I do. I know that feeling. We've got a super chat here from JB. Thank you very much. He said, I was listening to The Cure and being sad, but then I saw Analog Toys was live. So yeah, long live Analog Toys. Thank you, JB. Much appreciated. So I made a huge Action Man purchase right before Christmas. I don't have it yet. It's actually at Keith Knight's house.
Oh wow, yeah.
He's just organised the all the shipping over here. So after I had the guys from Leicester Vintage Toys on the show, I was chatting to them afterwards, and I said, "Oh, you know, I've always wanted the Action Man fire tender," and I said, "And I've seen it in a number of your shop tours."
Oh wow!
I was like, and I said, "You know, it's way out of my price range at the moment, but you know, I'm still curious to know, have you still got it in your shop?" And Joe's like, "Yeah, we've got it," and he said it's one of the nicest examples I've ever had. Like the stars have not been cut out of the box. The toy's beautiful. Like,
oh wow,
someone's had it out because the stickers have been applied, but it's like, I think it was a shop display piece because you know, you get 10 stars on that, which is half, back in the day was half a free Action Man figure.
Yeah, sure.
Not many vehicle boxes around today where the stars haven't been cut out. So anyway, and Joe was like, "Oh, don't worry about the money. Like, organize a trade or something." He's like, "Get in touch with me and we'll organize a trade." And about a week goes by, and I was pulling some bits and pieces out, thinking, you know, would he be interested in this? Would he be interested in that? Anyway, I just messaged him directly, and I said, "Joe, look, I don't want to be rude, mate, but I've seen the price on your website. I can't afford that. Can you knock anything off that price? And I'll keep the deal private." But I was going to be happy if he knocked off like 70 quid or something. Joe gave me an amazing deal, man. He knocked a huge amount off the price. The only thing wrong with the fire tender, he said, I've got to be upfront with you. He said, it's missing the axe off the side, and the axe is not the same as the one.
Dude, I've literally just given someone the bloody axe. Oh.
Well, no, it was all good because he said that to me, and I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, maybe, you know, I'm not going to make this huge purchase and get something with something missing." And I went on eBay, nothing on there. Went on eBay the next day, nothing there. The third day, an axe pops up. I buy it now. And the guy, he wanted a fair bit for it, but it had, you know, make an offer. So I made an offer and bought the axe before I'd even gone back and done a deal with Joe. So yeah,
I literally that. Sorry.
No, I was just going and Joe was not very comfortable shipping it overseas, and I said, "That's all good. I've got a good buddy in the UK. You can send it to him, and once it arrives there, like, you know, your responsibility's done, and I'll deal with it from there. I'll use DHL or something like that." And he said, "Oh, if it's just going to your mate," and he even covered the shipping cost. And it literally 2 days later, it was in Keith's lounge. So when that arrives, expect a big video about the entire Action Man Emergency series, because that's the last thing I need.
Oh, amazing! That's the fire tender is absolutely awesome. No, the axe. I mean, obviously these things happen. I just got a friend in Ireland, and he needed the axe, and because it was given to me, I was like, well, I felt wrong asking someone for money for it because it was given to me. So I sort of said to my mate, he's like, yeah, do what you want with it. I was like, so I sent it over to Ireland for him, but no, yeah, that fire tender is awesome. I mean, your Action Man collection is far nicer than mine. But dude, if there's ever a bit you're looking for, I've got so many around. Just drop me a message. If I've got it, you can have it. It's like,
well, vice versa, dude. Like I've got probably a dozen German stick grenades you can have. Like,
oh, amazing.
I mean, I think I've got quite a few. So I've got like every different version of the German Stormtrooper, but particularly the flocked hair, painted eye, gripping hands. That's like my one of my favorite. Even though I didn't grow up with that era, I think they're the most beautiful Action Man figures. So I've got like one vintage painted head German Stormtrooper. I've got the G.I. Joe equivalent with the foreign face. I've got the Eagle Eyes one with the PVC webbing and all that stuff. But yeah, the flocked hair Eagle Eye, I think I've got like 4 of those. I've got a bit of a thing for German Stormtroopers.
Yeah, they are awesome, and because not our page, but because I also do some adminning on Vintage Action Man Group VAMG, and it wasn't there. I can't remember. It doesn't the group it was is irrelevant, but somebody a while back was saying, "Oh, what's people's obsession with all these Nazis and stuff?" And it's like, well, no. People are appreciating a toy that was beautifully made. There's nothing in my heart that has any hatred. I appreciate the toy. I mean, I actually love the Soldiers of the Century. I love those. I just need to get the green.
Equally, from that same period, what another figure that I've got multiples of is the Parachute Regiment. So I've got a lot of the different versions, but that gripping hands, painted eye era, I've got like 4 of those Parachute Regiment from that era. So I've had people say that to me in the past about, you know, this obsession with, you know, with Nazi toys. And I'm like, that's not what it was to us when we were kids. So
no, not at all.
Think about it this way. If you were a kid who grew up in my generation with vintage Kenner Star Wars, how many of you wanted more than one Stormtrooper figure, an Imperial Stormtrooper?
Yeah.
And now collectors army build Stormtroopers and speeder bike scouts and all those figures. That's all I'm doing with German Stormtroopers. It's at the end of the day, it's a toy, and they were the enemy army.
Well,
even though Palitalk never pitched it as an enemy, it was just a
foreign uniform. Absolutely. I mean, on my shelf, I've got my German collection. I've got the DAT guy. I need to get the correct webbing. I've got the Panzer captain. He's in the wrong black. He's in policeman's trousers at the moment. I need to get but I'll find the trousers at some point. I've got a couple of German Stormtroopers. I've got the commander, whatever you call him, the cap, and I've got a few, and they look great together. They are great displayed together. And yeah, and in time, if I have more space, I'd definitely army build them, because I've got more outfits in my spares. Certainly got more. But then for a while, at one point I had 7 SAS like key figures displayed, and I've cut it down to 1 now because I'm like, well, these guys are taking up space. I've just sent one off to Michael at Retro Blasting. He knows it's coming, so it's no secret. But I sent one off to him, and he's like, "That's too kind." It's like, dude, seriously, please take it, because I've got spare figures. I don't know how it happened. I went from trying to put together 1 key figure to suddenly getting that job lot. And then it's like, once I got one, it was like buses. I remember looking for ages for a gas mask at a reasonable price, and all of a sudden I ended up like 5 or 6 of them, and
yeah.
It goes like that. And the times I've bought something and spent far too much on it, and then I've found it for a lot cheaper. I mean, the one thing I did find, like, if you go to Amcon, I can't even remember what part was it. I think it was Captain Zargan's laser sword or something.
Yeah.
And mine was snapped, and I like glued it back together, the old drill it out and stick it together with the wire and everything. And I was looking online, and I bought one, paid too much for it for a laser sword, but you can buy a perfect replica. But hey ho, went to Amcon and I could have literally picked one up for like, I think it's £4 or £5. Because I didn't wait, I should have waited. I'll say that to anyone out there. If you want to collect action men, go to the shows.
Yeah.
If you can, go to the shows.
Go to the shows, because the sellers aren't getting ripped off by eBay like eBay likes to do. You know, eBay are making it so hard to sell stuff now. Like, they take such a huge cut. You know, when you see stuff that's overpriced on eBay, like, understand that seller is probably losing 20% of that. You know, eBay even takes a cut of the postage fee that you charge. So
do they?
Like,
I did not know that.
I gave up eBay years ago because of that. Because I sold an item, probably 6 or 7 years ago. I sold an item here in Australia, and I shipped it to a guy, and I charged the guy $12 for shipping. And when it arrived on the box, it was like a $10 flat shipping rate, and he got shitty with me, and he was like, "I want the $2 back." And I said, "Well, first of all, that's a proper postal box that I went and bought. That was like $1.60. But eBay takes a 20% of the shipping charge as well. So if I don't charge you $12, you're going to pay me $10, and I'm only going to get $8. So I've got to pay out of my." I'm like, fuck this. But yeah, what you're saying, man, go to shows, because you get better deals. There's a lot there. You can rummage around. And as soon as you start connecting with people and getting to know people and chatting to them, all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'll knock another $5 off that, and then you can bundle stuff together. And unfortunately for me, I don't get to the AM shows anymore because of, you know, living in bumfuck nowhere, Australia. But
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I go to. I'm certainly never tried to be rude or never try to take the piss with traders, but I'm very open about, if you know, at a show you've got that option. You say to trader, someone offers you something. Nah, that's a bit much. They can either negotiate with you or not. But if you're at a show, chances are you can go across to the next table and someone else has got one as well.
Yeah.
So shows, and I would also say, to avoid eBay fees, some of the selling pages on Facebook can be good. You can get some reasonable deals there, but you have to go careful. Like, use PayPal goods and services, because you ain't got no comeback if it's friends and families.
Yeah.
But I only bring that up because we something we had to put out on our group the other day, and we weren't saying it to people to sort of tell them what to do, but we were like sort of saying, look, certain etiquette to buy, and if you don't know this person, take every step to protect your money, because, you know, how many times, well, have you ever been done over on a sale? I haven't, but a friend of mine got done on a sale the other day on something, not Action Man related, but got done for 120 quid on I think it was a G.I. Joe purchase through an Instagram page. So you've got to go so careful. But at least that show is there in your hand, isn't it? So
yeah, I mean, I've never been done over in that sense, where I've kind of sent money, and I've had probably one in all the years I've been collecting. I think I've only ever had like 1 or 2 items go missing in the mail. What one was a carded Mego Fonz with the thumbs up thing, but I'd bought from this seller so many times before. When it went missing, I was like, he was going to refund the money, and I was like, don't worry about it. I knew it wasn't his fault. You know, I'd literally been buying off this guy for about 8 years. Really reliable seller. You know, and the item just didn't turn up. But the one that really stands out to me though is the Action Man Space Explorer, the really rare outfit with the
white one with the dome and the
I bought one of those off a guy who was very, very well known in the Action Man collecting community. And it was years later, I made a video about it for the channel, and there was a guy in the comments telling me how the end of the pickup arm was repro, the dome was repro, and I was like, how can you tell? And he's like, well, because I make those domes, I make those repro domes. And he said, and that particular one you've got, I knew the badge on the overalls was a repro. This guy was watching this thing and he's like, I used to own that. And he said, I sold it to this guy, and I'm assuming he sold it to you. This was a few years after I'd bought it, probably 2 or 3 years after I bought it. And I was like, this really well-known guy in the community. Because if he had been up front with me at the start, I probably still would have bought it. I might have just asked for 40 quid off or something. But he just didn't divulge any of this information. Anyway, I'm not going to go into all that. I don't think he's around much in the community anymore. So
no, there's yeah. I remember that coming up. I knew that, or did you mention in the video, or I remember you saying so?
I've mentioned it. I've mentioned it a number of times because the same individual. I can't remember. It was on the Vintage Action Man forum. I don't even know if that forum still exists or if it's just a Facebook page now. But I used to be a member of that forum, and they used to do a monthly photo competition, and there was a theme. And then, like December was always, get your mountain and Arctic figures out and do a snow thing and that kind of thing. So each month there was a theme, and members of the forum would vote on the winning photo. And then at the end of the year, they used to produce a calendar, and the winning photo from each month would be the photo for that month in the calendar. And various different members of the group, not even the admins, just various members would go, hey, I'll offer up the prize for this month. And people would offer up different prizes. And this one month, and I think this was before I found out what had happened with that Action Man Space Explorer. But anyway, this guy popped up saying, right, the winner this month, there was a couple of other items, but one of them was a copy of the Story of Action Man on DVD. And I direct messaged him and said, hey, man, where did you get my fucking DVD from? And he's like, what do you mean your DVD? What are you talking about? I'm like, look at my profile picture. Look at my name. That's like, I made that thing. And he's like, oh, I just got it at a toy show. Now, the reason I was asking is all my DVDs were professionally, they weren't even burned. They were, what do they call them? However,
yeah, I know what you mean from when I used to be in bands, and that you could either pay for replication or duplication or straight up pay. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
So all of my DVDs, they were properly pressed. They had beautiful artwork on the disc. It came in a DVD. This was in a CD case with a homemade slip, and you opened it up, and it was just a burnt DVD. And it came to light that this same guy who had not been honest with me about the repro parts on this figure was selling these and he was supposedly a friend of mine. I was in Australia struggling to sell the last lot of stock of my DVDs on eBay, and he's over in because I was selling them for $20 each, quality DVD, and he's at shows in England selling them for £4 or £5. Complete piracy. So yeah, and that's when I said, fuck it, I'm putting a documentary on YouTube. And that was Christmas 6 years ago. I split the documentary into 3 parts, put it on YouTube, and went, no one else is ever gonna rip me off.
Actually, I remember it couldn't have been long after it went up on YouTube. I remember messaging you via Facebook before any of I ever did YouTube stuff, before we'd ever sort of conversed on it, because I asked if I could get where I could get a DVD, and I remember you saying they weren't available, but they are always that you put it on. Yeah. That's where you put it up. So yeah, I mean,
I've got about 10 copies left. I've given a few to some friends, and those last 10, I'm just gonna keep those.
You need those because you're proud of your work.
Yeah,
but we all do it. It's like when you appear in the local newspaper. Your mum always buys 10 copies and keeps them. Do you know what I mean? You want it to look
exactly back. Like my wife's always trying to get me to. We'll get invited to someone's birthday, and they're like, take them a Desert Rat figure for their birthday. I was like, no. She's like, you've got a case of 20. I was like, yeah, and I'm fucking keeping them. I need all. I want a full unopened case of, Bobby sent me. He sent me more than that, but I think I got 2 cases in total. But I've got 1 sealed case of 20 with the Action Force Valorverse logo on. And it's like, no, it's not that I've got 20 in there. I was like, I want a sealed shipping case full of them.
Absolutely. And what you don't want in 20 years' time is to go, oh, I'm down to my last 2. Oh shit, one's just broke, and then to pay through the nose for your own toy as well. It's your toy.
Exactly, man. Exactly. So
I totally get it, Tony. If it was me, if I had an action figure, I'd have a case of them. And and I get it. There's nothing vain about it. It's because you want it. It's almost like it's a backup, and also it's an achievement. That's your thing. It's like, years and years to come. Have you got
the Alan Hall books?
I have, yeah. I got them for a real steal. I brought them from Alan Hall himself. And we were at Shepton Mallet Toy Fair, and he had some that had water damage, and a couple of the pages were stuck together, but I knew I could get them apart. Lighter fluid, razor blade, whatever. And I did, and I got all 3 of them for 40 quid. So I knew I did well on that. The only thing that was wrong was one of them, the index page was destroyed. So again, I've mentioned him already tonight. Alan Dawson, I phoned him up, said, Alan, have you got the Alan Hall books? He said, yeah. I said, scan us one of the index pages. So he scanned it, sent it me, and I stuck it in there because I thought, well, I do want them for reference. And I like them. There's not a lot of words in them, but you don't need it because it's all visual. I get it. But
yeah, I mean, I bought the books when they were first coming out, and I was in Australia at the time, so shipping was expensive because what they ended up doing was that the first 2 were published by, I want to say, Middleton Press, I think it was called.
Mm-hmm.
You could buy the first 2, and the third one didn't come out till some time later. And then the third one, I think Alan took the profits from the first 2 books, and then so if you look at the bottom of them, the first 2
the third one says Modeler's Loft.
And they published it themselves. But the reason I asked that is in volume 3, which is all of the Eagle Eye era, there's a photo of a case of basic Action Man soldiers in the Chevron box, where there's like, I think there's
the one with him just running in his pants or whatever it is. That picture, yeah. Is that the one?
It's either that basic figure or the soldier. I can't remember, but Alan Hall had a photo of like the shipping box laid down. A row of like a dozen of them in there. It's because of that image in that book where I'm like, I want a case of Desert Rats, because I'll never have a full case of a dozen Action Man, boxed figures. So that's my equivalent. So yeah, that's where it all came from. Yeah. Yeah.
I know the picture, and I did see a case of Action Men probably 2-3 years ago. 2 years ago, someone was selling a case of them, and I think in the end they ended up breaking them up because people said, I'll give you this, and I do remember thinking, oh, it's a shame, because if I had the money, I'd like to just buy that, and you just, here's my collection. Here's some complete box. All their heads will have fallen off, but that doesn't matter. You can't see that. They're all in the box.
Yeah, 100%. I bought a sealed Action Man Frogman, eagle-eyed black Frogman, not the uniform, the boxed figure. I bought one from Bob direct from Bob Reekin, sealed box. Yeah, that head's come off. It rattles around in there. The head's loose, so it doesn't matter. That's very special to me because it came from Bob's collection as well. So
100%. And if you collect vintage Action Man and you like the dynamic physique and you've got them sealed in box, you've got 2 choices. You deal with the rattle, or you pop the lid open and get a bit of elastic. But that's the fit. That's another thing. Like, so when people are sort of, I will touch up painting things on Star Wars figures and stuff. I just want them to look nice. Because I did have Star Wars figures as a kid. I did have some. I did have the vintage ones, but they all got sort of amalgamated with the Power of the Force 2 toys, and I didn't care because I was a kid, I wanted to play with them. But with Action Man, there's a certain level of, you have to accept certain things. As much as I'd love all my figures to have the original gripping hands. I've only got one decent pair of gripping hands, and they happen to be on a figure that Bob signed for me. That's a complete tank commander that I've made a little display case for. But in the Action Man circle, you have to accept certain things. If you like Eagle Eye's dynamic physique, you're going to be sticking their heads back on if they're out of the pack. Chances are you're going to be buying Repro gripper hands. You're going to have to replace the elastic on goggles and things because it just literally snaps and falls off.
Yep. Over the years I've been collecting, man, I've probably put new elastic on the same pair of goggles 4 or 5 times. Like it's like every 2 or 3 years I go through the collection and spend a day just redoing elastic rifle slings. And so there was a super chat I missed earlier. My apologies. Kevin Trebell, thank you very much. No comment, but I didn't want to miss that. Much appreciated. Yeah, it's the same like with people who collect G.I. Joe Real American Hero. If you don't replace those O-rings, the figures are useless. There's nothing wrong with it, man.
Yeah, if they're out of the pack, like the only thing I've got a couple of O-ringed figures. Like I've got the Destro, just because in Action Force they when it became Action Force International, they call it, was it the Jackal they called him, or Jackal or something or other? Yeah. Destro's figure. And I thought, well, I can't find one of those, and so I picked up a Destro. He looks cool. And I had to change his O-ring because you could see it was wrong. The only thing I did was I picked one that I got a slightly more stretchy O-ring, because in my head I was like, I don't want to put this under too much tension in case it breaks. And then lo and behold, I tried to push his foot onto a star stand the other day, blew his heel out, and thank God for plastic weld, and now I need to find another leg. That was a hard learned lesson. I swore a little bit that.
I've done that. I remember buying a pack of like 50 of these stands from China or something, and they turned up and they're all a little bit too big. But they were sold on eBay as 4 G.I. Joe. Boom, the first one, the heel come off, and then I had a look, and it's like these things are too big. A whole pack of 50, I just binned them. I was like, I don't want to even have them laying around in case I break another heel.
Fortunately, because it was Destro and the plastic responds well with plastic weld, I plastic welded it on, and you can't really see it, but it was the chrome on his head's perfect, the paint's perfect, and I'm like, so now I need to find a donor lower. I'll find one. It's not a rush, but to say I was pissed off with myself is an understatement, because it's one of those things, isn't it? But you live and learn.
Yeah. Kevin Trebell, this is a super chat he wanted to send before. Said, I just had no idea what a golden age of toys I was growing up in. I know a lot of collectors talk to me about how, they didn't realize until later in life when they look back and they started to appreciate it. I always, and it's because of growing up with my dad being a toy collector and admiring what he had and putting them in cabinets. I certainly didn't know that the period I was growing up in was going to be one of the best periods for toys, but I certainly appreciated that stuff and knew from the age of 8 that I would be sitting here, maybe not having a YouTube channel because I didn't know what the internet was at the time, but I knew I would still be here at 45 years of age collecting this stuff. So yeah. Keith Knight, thank you for the super chat. He says, hi, Tony and Nick. Can't wait to see the emergency Action Man video, mate. That's right up my street. It is. Ex-London Copper. There you go.
I can't wait to see it either. Sorry?
I thought I interrupted you.
No, sorry. I stutter occasionally sometimes. So I go, so apologies. That's why I'll often go, no, carry on, because
it's all good.
It's one of those things.
Well, look, this is we've been going for over an hour now, and this is the point in the show where I like to play a little game with my guests. Are you familiar with the game, Nick?
I am indeed. I can't promise that I've been not stressing, but this has been the one part of the day where I'm like, oh God, I hope I can come up with decent words.
It's a lot of my guests are around and so they actually find it a lot harder than they think it's going to be, because you always want to use at least 2 words, like an adjective and a noun or something like that. So Bobby Collins says, RIP to my speakers. Was that really loud? I might have to fix that for next time. I don't know. I haven't got headphones in and I'm deaf, so
my hearing's ruined anyway, so no issues here.
All right, so a variety of different topics. We have 5 rounds. I'm going to throw out the name of something. It could be a specific toy, a toy line, a movie, well, whatever it is, and you've got to try and sum up that thing in 1 word. And as I always do, I don't prepare for this. Sometimes I write stuff down during the show, but I didn't bring a pen and paper today, so I've got to go off the top of my head here. Sum up for me in 1 word. Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles.
Bizarre.
That's a good word. I would Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The word I would use, and I'll straight up say that I'm stealing this from Michael French at Retro Blasting, because I didn't know this was a word. Toddlery. He said that in a very, very old video about the party wagon.
Yeah, no. So it is a bizarre toy. The whole concept of it is bizarre. But they're yeah, that's my word, bizarre. Everything about it's bizarre, but my God, did I love it when I was 4.
It was bizarre, but everybody loved it. I mean, because that's how we then got Samurai Pizza Cats, Street Sharks, Biker Mice from Mars, like
Bucky O'Hare.
I think Bucky O'Hare had been around longer. Maybe not the toys, but
I don't know. I mean, I can remember Bucky O'Hare as a kid, sort of. But then, as I said, all amalgamates into one. I could be completely wrong. I probably am wrong, Tony. To be fair.
Oh, all right. This isn't easy for me coming up with new questions. But can you sum up for me in 1 word? I'm gonna cheat here.
Oh God.
Can you sum up for me in 1 word our friend Alan Dawson?
Knowledgeable.
Yeah, knowledgeable. I'm gonna yes, 100%.
I mean, I know Alan really well, as you do, and the temptation just to throw something rude out there just to wind him up. But no.
I was just scrolling because I know he was in the chat. I'm not sure if he's still here or not. I know it's getting late over there. He might have to work in the morning. But the word I would use for Alan Dawson is legendary, and there's a little story behind. He's still in the chat. It says here we go. Be very.
I don't know if it's be very careful, you or me, Tony. I'm not sure.
No,
he can get to me easier than you.
I'm going to call Alan Dawson a legend because I started collecting Action Man when I was 16. When I was 17, I went into the Australian Army and didn't really collect a lot that year because I'm doing basic training and specialist military training and all that stuff. So then probably when I turned 18 and I had been assigned my squadron and I knew where I was living, and you're starting to get your weekends off again after a year of like flat out training. I started to look around to see if there was toy show. And again, this was still pre-internet days.
Mm-hmm.
And I found an ad in a newspaper for a guy who was advertising to buy vintage Action Man stuff. And although I didn't want to sell anything, I got in touch with him He was like, "Hey, come round and meet me." And I went and met this guy, and he's quite well known in Australia. He got into collecting vintage Action Man when it was still available in the shops. Like, he was a child of the 60s who grew up with the painted hair stuff. So in 1982, when he started feeling nostalgic, he started buying all this stuff, had this enormous collection. And I always remember him. He opened up this he had this black phone book, and listed in there was a number of names of people that over the years he had connected with in the UK. Alan Hall's name was in there, Chris Malbon from Metropolis, and Alan Dawson's name was in there. And he was like, these are the heavy hitters in the Action Man collecting world. And this was in 1995. So the man was already a legend back then, long before I ever met him in person.
So to say to you, one of the first things I said to Alan, because we've both sworn on this, I presume it's okay to tell the story accurately. When I first finally met Alan in person, I said to him, "So you're fucking Alan Dawson. Everywhere I go, it's Alan Dawson. Every page I go on, it's Alan Dawson. It's Alan Dawson everywhere I go. I've heard of you. And you're him. Oh, you actually do wear a kilt." So, no, me and Alan get on really well. I'm sure I irritate him from time to time, and he did tell me off for drunken hijinks when we went out for a meal after AmCon. But,
nothing wrong with that. I have to apologise to Brian Dillingham, because like 40 minutes ago he sent this super chat at 37 minutes ago. I'm so sorry, Brian, but thank you very much for the Dillinghamism. I'm enjoying this conversation so much. I'm missing super chats here. Apologies, everyone. All right, that's 2 down, is it?
2 down, yeah.
2 down. All right. Can you sum up for me in one word the character options line of Doctor Who figures?
Awesome.
I recently received the new Davros and Dalek 2-pack from a very, very generous supporter of the channel. I think I mentioned in my video that was one thing I wanted to add was a Davros, because Davros scared the crap out of me when I was a kid. And that's such a good toy line, man. All right, they don't have the articulation of Marvel Legends, but they don't need to either. Like,
no,
you don't have to pose Tom Baker like Spider-Man, But the sculpting, the paint, it's insane.
I love them. In fact, I've got to go into Poole tomorrow, so I've got to go see my mum. And I can guarantee I'll call him B&M, or is it B&M or Home Bargains? They're right next to each other. One of them's always got Doctor Who stuff in. So if there's anything in particular that you're after, let me know. And if it's there, I'll pick it up for you. Because but the staff are cottoning on now. I swear that, could be wrong, but I swear the staff get to the stuff first and put it on eBay. Because the amount of bits I've gone in for and you can't find it, it's up on eBay for like double, triple the price.
Yeah, I think I've only ever wanted a relatively small collection. The one thing I really do, I've got myself a K9 now.
Nice.
Which I didn't have when I made the video. So now with K9 and Davros, I think that's the core. I have a TARDIS, but it's not the right one. So I really want to get a Tom Baker era TARDIS, and then I'll probably be done with that. I don't need another modern toy line to.
Yeah, but that's so when we moved in, just quick, because I know you want to go for the questions. When we moved into our first house we bought together, me and the missus, because I've collected toy. If I had told everything, this would go on for hours. But basically, that was one of the first toy lines as an adult that I actively started collecting again, and she did as well. And we had a bookcase, and we were just filling it up with all these Doctor Who toys. And we got some doubles and duplicates, and we've given those to Garrett now, and he plays with them. But I must get them out on display again. But I agree, if I went into that line again, where do you stop with it?
And that's why I was very much, I'm not really into Doctor Who, just from my childhood memories. is I watched reruns of Tom Baker Doctor, because I grew up in the Peter Davison era, and I did watch that, but I always preferred Tom Baker. Like I remember seeing the episodes with Davros and that kind of thing. So yeah, I just
do you remember
window.
Do you remember were you aware of the channel UK Gold when you're in the UK?
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically how I got into Doctor Who was on the weekends they used to like play 5, 6, 7, they play like a whole serial each weekend on this Sky channel. So I used to sit and watch those. I loved them. And then when it came back out in 2005, 2006, whenever it was, I just went in and just found my love for it again. I do love Doctor Who, and it's great because, as I say, the wife likes it, and the kid, my little boy cosplays as Matt Smith, Doctor. He's amazing.
Awesome. He wears a bow tie, doesn't he, Matt Smith? Yeah.
Yeah. So we went to the Tank Museum at Bovington because I live about 5-minute drive from there, and they had a Doctor Who day at the Tank Museum. Anyway, they had all the Daleks there going about and all the people cosplaying. And Jackson, bless him, he sees this Dalek and they've got the microphones. They're doing a Q&A session with the Daleks. And this guy dressed as Sylvester McCoy's Doctor goes, "Oh, and here's another one of us coming." And little Jackson goes running across, goes, "I'm here. Oh, stop that." He's fucking screwdriver. Oh, brilliant. Sorry, yeah. I'll stop now because.
Well, did you get into Thunderbirds when you were young? Because that got that sort of renaissance on TV in the 90s.
You know your video, The Toy That Ruined Christmas?
Yeah.
So I was one of the lucky kids that got Tracy Island. Oh man, I loved it. And it's because my dad. Totally because of my dad, because he loved it as a kid. They were rerunning it on BBC, and then you fall down the rabbit hole. So then I got into Captain Scarlet. I had those toys that you showed in the video. Yeah. Stingray, there was a few of, was never my favorite, but I watched Stingray. I remember watching shows like Joe 90, all of that stuff. But I really did like Captain Scarlet. But Thunderbirds, yeah, man. I had the Tracy Island, I had the Matchbox set I got that year, and it had all the Thunderbirds in it. Always disappointed there wasn't a Thunderbird 5 with that, though. It always bugged me. But
yeah.
Yeah, you had Lady Penelope's car, and yeah, loved it. Absolutely loved it. I'd like to get that back, but that goes for a price now.
Sum up for me in one word the Tracy Island playset.
Oh. Exceptional.
Oh, it's a good word. It's such a cool toy, man, with a little die cast. Yeah. It's not even something that I felt nostalgia for. Like I remember seeing all that stuff in the shops in the early 90s. I was a teenager, and I was buying some of it just because I liked the card art and stuff like that. Yeah.
Oh, it was so amazing because the swimming pool, you turn the stairs, the Thunderbird 1 could come up. Thunderbird 3 hid down in that little tunnel bit with the buildings around it. I think there was a little lever to the side of the runway for Thunderbird 2, and as you tilted that, the door flipped back and the trees went to the side.
Yeah,
and you had little parking. Yeah, and you had a little parking space around the back record, a little space you could put Lady Penelope's car. Either that or that's just where I used to put it.
Yeah,
and yeah, that was all. I loved that toy. That was so much fun, and I had a few of the like little Thunderbirds figures as well. So although the scale was wrong, I used to play with them around the back of it like they were there, and then the ships would get. I loved it.
Yeah.
That was good times.
So Nick, have you noticed? Have you got any of your friends in the chat, or is there people you know watching this live stream?
Yeah, there are. And one of my friends, Miss Detty, who pops up on my live streams with me, said she wouldn't be too offended if I didn't mention her or say hello. And I was going to not mention her or say hello, but no. Yeah, so Miss Detty's in. I'm just looking for. Obviously, we all know Scuba. Just looking through now. Alan, of course, Alan. VTR's here. Jeff Barker's here. TJC. There's loads of people in here I know who are friends, but there's loads of names who I commonly talk to in live streams. I'm amazed that this many. Oh, Connor Fuller's here. He's hilarious. He can never tell it live on air, but you must ask him about the Father Michael story. Hilarious.
Well, this is the fifth and final round, and this is for your friends. I want you to sum up for us in one word your band.
My band?
The band you're in, yeah. Or were in. Is it still going?
No, it all ended at lockdown. The band I was in, Ambitious.
All right. What was the name of your band?
Okay, so it was called Silk Bullets. And the reason it was called, we couldn't think of a name. So I can remember me and my friend at the time, we were putting the band together. We were like, oh, Jesus Christ, getting a band name together is always a nightmare. It's like we had 2 or 3 people showing up that night to audition. Coincidentally, all 3 of those people joined the band. Yeah. And so there was 3 of us there. Paul, the drummer, Dan, the guitarist, me, the bassist. And my friend Dan at the time, he was massively into Velvet Revolver. And in my head, I was like, Velvet, Silk, Revolvers. Should we call it Silk Bullets? And we're like, it's all right. And worst case scenario, we can tell people we named it after a sex toy. And they laugh, and we kept the name. So that's how I used to always, when I go to meet people at pubs to book the band and stuff, because we were a covers band, I always used to say Silk Bullets. And if you're struggling to remember the name, think of a sex toy, and you'll never forget this. And it worked. They always booked it. So yeah, that's what we were called.
Keith Knight here saying Nick is a bassist. Hey, fellow low ender. Yeah, Keith has been playing the bass guitar for many, many years. Oh. So, yeah. Well, look, Nick, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to come and join me on Palitalk and talk. I always like having British guests on because a lot of our, even with us, slightly different age, we've still got a lot of those memories we can relate to. Before we wrap things up, I'd like to give you the opportunity to plug your channel or any other social media pages, what you got going on.
Cool. So my channel is Action Pop Dad, APD for short. You'll now know I'm Nick. I've got a few things in the pipeline coming up. I'm starting a podcast with a lady called Kim, or Kim Gonnett's her username. So we've been working on that in the background. That's going to be quite cool. I've just scripted a video, which I've asked a certain somebody to do a part on, and he agreed. So that will be coming out soon. And yeah, so just all I would say is bear with me. It's a bit of a slow start for APD this year, but I'm really working on bringing together what it is I want to do with APD. Still in the same ballpark, still very much what we do in this community, but I just really want to now focus on some more of my passions, and hopefully you guys will be along for the ride and you'll enjoy it. But I can be found here on YouTube, and I've got an Instagram page, which is Action Pop Dad, and I'm on Twitter. I don't say very much because I've found previously when I had a Twitter account, I just used to offend people. So I just don't read other people's things. So yeah,
the whole concept socials. Of Twitter offends me. So,
and if I'm being really cheeky, sorry. I was going to say you can buy APD t-shirts if you like. Sorry, Tony.
No, you're right. You're right. Sammy Edwards, thank you very much for the super chat. This is a great show. Love just listening. Have a great night. The link to Action Pop Dad is in the description below. Where can they get those t-shirts, Nick?
So if you go to my community page, there's a link to the shop. And the only reason I've made it available is I wanted my own T-shirt to wear when I come on live streams and things.
Yeah.
And a couple of my friends were like, "Oh, you should put that up for sale." And I'm not making any money on them. It's basically a print-on-demand company. But I thought, well, actually, why not? If somebody wants to walk around in an APD T-shirt, you can go there, go to my community page. The poster's there. Follow it through, and you can order one yourself. I've kept the price as low as I can. Like I said, I'm not making any money on it, but I don't care. I'm honoured if anyone wants to wear one of my T-shirts. I'm happy.
Awesome.
So yeah, brilliant. Thank you.
All right, well, yeah. Thanks again for taking the time, Nick. Please stay on. We'll chat afterwards. Thank you, everyone in the chat, and yeah, I'm hoping I'm going to get a video out soon. I'm hoping to get one done this weekend. Might be talking some vintage Star Wars this time. So, all right, thanks for tuning into Palitalk, and me and Nick will see you next time. Bye bye.
Thanks for watching, guys. Bye bye.